Welcome back to The Upgrade, the Hotel News Now EMEA podcast. Welcome again. I'm Terence Baker, Hotel News Now's news editor for Europe, Middle East and Africa. Again, as always, if you've been listening to these podcasts, I'm ably assisted by producer Patrick Skillicorn. And this month we're joined by Daniel Johansson, Director of Development and Acquisitions at London-based service apartments operator and owner Cheval Collection. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. Hi. Good morning.
It's really good to have you here. I'm really pleased that you came in. Firstly, I should say that, I've probably known Daniel for 10 years almost now, since you're working at Campbell Gray Hotels.
Yeah, it's probably even longer.
Maybe. You were there, I believe, for a while. We won't say how long. And now about 5 years at Cheval, maybe counting.
Yeah, you're right. I was with Campbell Gray for a very long time, and it was a fantastic journey. That company really evolved over time, and we worked on some spectacular projects. And now it feels like time has sort of already flown at Cheval Collection, and where we're doing some great things. And that obviously leaves us on to service departments.
It certainly does. And I should say that when I started at Hotel News Now in 2013, service departments were, for persona non grata of the industry, if that's the right word, we were loath to write about them. We said, no, we are a website that writes about hotels. Our readers are hoteliers, investors who invest in hotels, and service departments are something else. But as you'll remember, hotels, not too long ago, but hotels were regarded as an alternative real estate asset class, weren't they? So, it all works into the scheme of things. That's changed, as I say. Service departments are very much centre of the industry. We've changed too, Daniel. So maybe, if it's the right term for this country, and History 101 is probably an American term, or any Maths 101 or whatever it might be, but can you give me a recap of how the sector has developed over, say, the last 20 years, and what's spurred the demand for its offerings?
First of all, I would say sort of service departments as we know it today, with really significant interest from developers and investors, and also representation from pretty much all of the large hotel companies, didn't really come onto the radar until you had Airbnb spreading the word, and of course the pandemic. The two of those really accelerated awareness and the product development. There were always a product out there, and you had often smaller owner-operator models and not that many well-known brands, but the larger brands like the Marriott's, Accor, IHG, etc., they had an apart hotel, they had an extended stay product in their portfolio of brands, but it wasn't necessarily something they were pushing very hard. So, or even maybe they didn't see that much demand for it, but that has certainly changed. Now, with a really much defined offering, ranging from luxury space, where we're at, to a budget lifestyle segment, there's a bit of choice out there. And why? Because the guest is looking for it, and they're looking for that type of accommodation, and really also investors could see how resilient it was, and they look and like that efficient model.
And supposedly, when one of the major hotel companies takes a punt into a space, others probably aren't too far from following them. It seems to be probably a case of that a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about Cheval in particular. A couple of weeks ago, I, as many of our listeners, I imagine, were at the annual hospitality conference in Manchester, rebranded, by the way, from the annual hotel conference. So right there, they're probably looking at things in your space and other fringe, or not so fringe, real estate classes at the moment. There was actually a dedicated panel at that conference on...
Good to hear.
on and I attended it. So on service departments, and I'll flatter you here, Cheval Collection was spoke of very glowingly. So maybe just let me know and our listeners know what's been happening at Cheval in the last half a decade since you joined.
Yeah, no, sure. And it is good to hear that Cheval was mentioned, because obviously then it feels like our brand awareness is working. I have been on panels there with AHC before, so they definitely talk about it, and I just hope it will continue to develop even further and be higher up on the agenda. Regarding Cheval and sort of what's been happening is that, first of all, I guess I should explain that Cheval has sort of been, it's been a very successful operator of service departments for about 40 plus years. So we started as an owner-operator, basically as a property company with a variety of real estate. So we had retail, offices, residential, hotels, and service departments. And then you kind of need to fast forward to 2018, and the company had restructured to create an OpCo-PropCo. And so operating company is Cheval Collection, under which we have 3 brands. It's Cheval Residences, Cheval Maison, and a new brand of ours, My Locanda. And our strategy is to grow on an asset-light basis. So this is when I was brought on board. And I'm delighted then to say also, as a team, we have signed up some great projects. So today we operate in London, Edinburgh, and Dubai, with Riyadh and Glasgow also in the works. And we have some really interesting projects across Europe. And what we are seeing is more and more interest from investors and developers that are now drawn to the benefits of owning service apartments. So basically what's been happening is that we're growing light on HMAs, and long may it continue.
Let's talk about blurring. I mean, we've seen blurring over the last 7 or 8 years, last 5 years, between hotels and service departments, perhaps. We're also certainly seeing it in other types of accommodation. We might see it in further ones. Maybe there'll be a blur between service departments and glamping, who knows. But how do you see that blurring, and how do investors look at it? How has that real estate class changed? Is it soon to eclipse traditional hotels in performance and guest preference? Is the industry
that of course.
Of course, indeed, because you're working so diligently. But how do you see that all panning out?
No, I mean, joking aside, it's about it being the future. I think there's room for all. But what I think would hugely benefit service departments if there were more good product out there. So that gives us the opportunity, because there isn't so much good product out there, but it's also the challenge, because it's left or has a reputation sometimes of being slightly lower end product or purely for a certain corporate market, and that's not the case at all. It also then depends on how you categorize and define service departments, which is a bit complex, because to some it's only long stay, extended stay, but for us it's the flexibility of being able to cater for both. And then where do you place apart hotels? So I would say our My Locanda brand is an apart hotel. You have smaller units, mainly studios, more transient business, F&B in the lobby as well. And then I would also place Eden's Lock and a few other brands in that segment. Another thing to consider is then where to factor in basically where you are, what jurisdiction you're in. As an example, in the Middle East, our product is hotel apartments. And in the UAE, there are then 2 categories, standard and deluxe. And we've also entered Saudi Arabia, and there, if you talk about service departments, the units are typically rented out on a long-let basis. So there we're categorized as apartment hotel. So blurring, etc. Yeah, it's all happening, even with the putting it in the right category. I feel generally that there is a blur between hotels and our kind of service departments. Because with our apartments, you have all of those in one building, like in a hotel. And so unless you're staying on a long stay, you have your room cleaned daily. And then obviously you have reception concierge, there's maintenance, management in the building. So you're in a hotel. but your accommodation also has typically, if you have a one-bed, living room, kitchen, and so on.
So it's blurs within blurs within blurs within different types of destination. I mean, what location and destination type do you always have in mind? One would assume, maybe ignorantly, but this is an urban phenomenon, notably in capital hub cities, perhaps oil and energy producing centres, other demand drivers of that type. What are you looking for? I mean, what's your destination?
Well, so first of all, I would say our product works really well both urban and in a resort setting. And that's maybe a bit of a surprise or news to some, but it really does work extremely well.
I'd like to hear more about
that. And to touch on one of our projects, I'll refer to our location in Dubai on the Palm. I would categorize that as an urban resort. Because you have a rooftop swimming pool, you have a gym, F&B on the ground floor, that then also gives services to the roof amenities and the apartments. If you step outside of that building, just a few seconds away, you've got the Nakheel Mall. If you were to cross the street, you have a great beach. And it's also mainly leisure. So that's, although you're in Dubai, it's obviously a city with a great beach. It's urban resort to me. We also have some of those pure resort projects in discussion, and that's something I think is really exciting. If we are one of the first to do it and so on, I think that would be superb. But to be fair, most of the projects we review, they are in urban locations. And I think also to go on, say, the beauty with the service department product is that it suits short, long business, leisure, because it has also an efficient operation. So you don't need all the F&B outlets and meeting rooms and spa, etc. Some of it is quite costly to build. It's quite staff intensive, and then most of the time, certainly not the highest profit margin. So our industry, as service departments, is recognizing today that there is more demand from leisure. And perhaps before, quite rightly, it was quite corporate. And I think that sort of relates to how people also want to get together, what type of accommodation they're looking for, and even corporate well-being standards. That's something that's they're basically setting a standard for what type of accommodation those corporates should stay in when they're away for work. So I don't know about you, but if you had a choice, rather than having a small hotel room, either with an extra bed, or if you were connecting and you had two small hotel rooms, versus having an apartment with a shared living room space, I think I know which one I would choose.
And it still falls into that sort of leisure as well, and people travelling for different reasons with their family at the end of a conference or end of a business trip or whatever. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how service departments develop, because if they are moving into resort areas, and we you know, that's inevitable, and we are seeing that, how that blur is going to continue, and what the differences will be between standard hotels and service departments within those resort destinations. It's going to be fascinating. We'll stay tuned to that, I imagine. So take us through Cheval's portfolio. Where are you? How has that changed, and will it change again in a not too distant future? Obviously, you're talking about resorts.
No, sure. So just to recap briefly, we started as an owner-operator. So we've had an organic growth there with a central London portfolio up until the restructure. So it's only from 2019 that we really pushed brand awareness and expanded the portfolio through management agreements. So today we have 9 in London, 3 in Edinburgh, 2 in Dubai, and with a second one in its pre-opening phase at the moment there. Plus then 1 in Riyadh and another one in Glasgow. And we can take on a lot more because we have a really fantastic setup. And our ambition is to add more properties on a global basis. But on a day-to-day, I tend to focus on UK, Europe, and the Middle East, but genuinely we have no geographical restrictions. And we're working hard on adding projects in Europe, and we have some lovely opportunities in discussion. But one of our challenges is this continuing request for leases, but especially across Europe. However, that is really it's opening up for HMAs slowly but surely.
So leases aren't really an option for you. You like your management contracts.
We're open to all scenarios, but we focus our growth on HMAs.
And Saudi Arabia, no doubt, will be of increased interest to you as it is to everyone else. In terms of London, Daniel, maybe other hub cities, we're seeing a lot of office conversions to a hotel and service apartment sector. I think being on the overground train today going into London, I think we're back to peak, back to office. As you might know, I usually run to work, but on occasion I get the train. Today it was packed. So, do you see a lot of owners continually moving out of office and instead of looking at hotels, looking at service departments?
Yes, there is a recovery to offices, but
there is a conversion. It's perhaps easier to convert.
On sort of first about the offices, I think because so many of us are working away so efficiently, I think it has fundamentally changed the landscape. So therefore, yes, we are looking at office conversions, but it's great, obviously, that the cities are busy again and there is room for office too. But I think that landscape is changing, and those types of buildings and what even the tenants are looking for is changing. And obviously, to be fair, it's not all buildings that lend themselves to service departments, but where I think we definitely have an advantage is that we can do without quite a lot of the public spaces. So, hotels would always want to have one or two or several F&B outlets, a large lobby, meeting rooms, and the other differentiation is that we can work with fairly deep floor plates, which offices often have. So, I guess a final point to note is you have it can actually help by creating apartments rather than hotel rooms in terms of planning permissions, because the product of what you're developing, and then that will also potentially future-proof your investment, because you can revert to residential very easily one day.
London probably, that planning permission would be a consideration. Maybe in other cities, councillors would prefer to have a nice hotel to show off their cities. But in London, there's so much real estate opportunities now across all of that. How about things like loyalty schemes? As you develop into a bona fide real estate asset class in the upcoming years, Daniel, things like loyalty schemes, obviously repeat customers are best, aren't they? What other traditional hotel things like loyalty schemes are you producing and marketing?
Well, obviously there are quite a few brands in the service department space that already have loyalty schemes, and the hotel brands that have that product, they run with the same loyalty scheme. Of course. You just have to be careful of what you do with the extended stay market and so on. So it's always a little bit complex to work out, whether it's a point system or whatever that might be. I would say at Cheval, we're quite fortunate actually to already have quite an extensive and loyal customer base. And you could actually argue whether a loyalty scheme would even be beneficial for us. But it is obviously competitive out there, and to enhance our reach and give also our loyal customers something that benefits them, we have actually decided to go for a loyalty scheme now. So we recently announced that we signed with GHA, and that's Global Hotel Alliance, for their loyalty program. So that will go live for us next year. So early next year, and I think, and we think it'll be really good for our loyal and new guests, but also really important for our growth, because it gives the developers and investors also even more confidence. And that we can deliver that distribution in new destinations, which is going to be important when we're suddenly talking about a project in Madrid, for example. So GHA for us is what we decided on, and that has 40 independent brands. It would give us access to about 27 million members, so fantastic.
It's almost breaking news here. Is it breaking news, or is that
we have announced it?
You've announced it. Okay, well, our listeners are hearing about it again. That's really good. Something to look forward to. And so perhaps lastly, Daniel, and you'll remember this, and I'm going to make you say something about the future. But was it 7 or 8 years ago that when Patron Capital invested into Generator, hostels suddenly entered the big time? And as we've seen since, investors are investing more into that space. It's developed hostels, hybrids, glamping, etc., etc. It didn't quite become an asset class, but it went into the big time investment pantheon, if you will. You'd probably say service departments already there, but where do you see investors looking at you, say, in 5 years' time? I mean, there's some forms of capital we know would not be able to invest in that kind of thing because of their corporate charters, blah, blah, blah. I mean, where do you see it in 5 years?
Well, I guess I'd love to be as optimistic as you're describing it, but I perhaps don't see it taking over hotels, and that's because the larger groups, they are primarily pushing the hotel brands, primarily. But today you certainly have in service departments a much more defined offering that is sitting very comfortably alongside hotels. So another thing that I think will happen is that the more and more of the service department brands and smaller and great portfolios that are created, they will be snapped up by the larger companies, just like they're snapping up hotel brands that are really cool, unique, and have a great concept.
So some blurring, but also, of course, acquisitions. They don't stop, do they? So as you say, it might be some bolt-on portfolios to the big hotel brands. Daniel, thank you so much. Daniel Johansson for Cheval Collection. I very much appreciate you coming on. It's fascinating to speak to you. We're going to be fascinated how this whole part of the hotel industry develops over the next 5, 10, 20 years. Hotel News Now, we obviously write about every aspect of the hotel industry. A couple of stories you might want to catch up with at hotelnewsnow.com. As I said earlier, I've been attending the annual hospitality conference in Manchester, a couple of days there, so there's lots of stories on our pages from that. We wrote about sleep hotels, the Danish hotel company, last month. I probably mentioned it on this podcast. I spoke to their founder, Peter Haber, about the development of sleep hotels once they divorced from H World International, formerly Deutsche Hospitality. He was keeping very stum on the fact that he was just about to sign a deal converting all 14 of the sleep hotels in Denmark to Marriott brand, in particular for 4 Points Flex by Sheraton. So we've written an article on that as just as a kind of addendum to that larger article on sleep and H World. And looking a little farther out of the EMEA region, there's a great deal of coverage on the devastating hurricanes that affected Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and other parts of the United States. Catastrophic news there, unfortunately, but we're covering that too. As I always mention on this podcast, every fortnight, every 2 weeks, we have an EMEA newsletter, comes out on a Thursday. Please go online at hotelnewsnow.com, go to the sign up page and scroll down to the place you can put your name and email address opposite the picture of Berlin Cathedral. So all that's left for me to say is to thank Daniel again. Thank you for listening, and I hope you'll tune in next time. This is The Upgrade for Hotel News Now EMEA podcast. It was produced by Patrick Skillicorn, and additional material and lots of data, not that we had too much in this particular podcast, but that's always provided by STR's William Anns. Thank you to them, And once again, thank you to you for listening. It's been a pleasure as always. We'll see you next time.
Hi, I'm Isaac Colazo, Vice President of Analytics at STR.
Hi, and I'm Jan Freitag, National Director for Hospitality Analytics for the CoStar Group. Tune in to our new show, Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast.
It's a podcast on the global hotel industry, its current trends, what we're thinking about, and where the industry's going.
And we like to have fun with the data too. Find us on hotelnewsnow.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe today.
This episode of The Upgrade was recorded in October of 2024 and edited by Rachel Daub. Look for this and more at hotelnewsnow.com.